Welcome everyone. This is an exciting night for the university and for the English department. I'm Mary Catherine Harrison. I'm chair of the department. I had the great honor of being colleagues with John Freeman for my entire career, and we miss him greatly. And tonight we're so delighted to celebrate the work of his son, whom we know in print as Cal Freeman, but I know he goes by different names, depending on when you loved him and knew him. So tonight will be a night of poetry, will be a night of celebration, is a night of remembrance of John, and is also a night honoring John's legacy with presenting the first 2 scholarships that are named for him. I want to make sure you know, before we get started, that there are books for sale in the back. Cal Freeman's brand new book, hot off the presses, is what we'll be hearing from tonight primarily. Poolside at the Dearborn Inn. We're selling it for $20, and $5 of every sale will go directly to the scholarship, to supporting our students in the future. And we also have his first book, Fight Songs, which is we're selling for $10, and all of that money is going to the scholarship. So I would encourage you to buy both. I would guess you could get them signed if you ask very, very nicely. And I also want to draw your attention to the flyer that's on all of your tables. There is a QR code, which if you take a picture of it with your camera, and it will take you to the fundraising page for the scholarship. We have raised over $15,000, which is a testament to John and how loved he was and what an impact he has. I would say every donation that you make will go directly to his legacy and supporting English majors and minors at the university. So with that, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nick Brombies, who was chair of the department when I was hired, and I believe was John chair when you were hired?
No, but shortly thereafter.
Shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
So you can see that we have a tight-knit community in our department. In the back, my colleague Rosemary Weatherston is selling books and helped organize this event. My colleague Heather Hill is going to be presenting the scholarships. And our colleagues Michael Berry and Amanda Hyber and Megan Novell and Michael Laughlin, and I'm probably missing somebody, are all so happy to have you here. I also must say a huge thanks to the library. This room is a literary landmark, which was designated a literary landmark because of Dudley Randall, who was the poet in residence at our university and a librarian at the university. And because of his legacy, we have things like the Dudley Randall Poetry Prize, which John won one of when he was an undergraduate here. And we have a community of exciting, creative work, which we see in our colleagues and in our students, many of whom are here today, and many of whom are poets themselves or readers of poetry. So thank you to the library for hosting us, for the hospitality. Thank you for being here to support our literary legacy at the university. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick Brombies.
Oh, thanks, Mary Catherine Harrison. So great to see so many people here on a rainy night at the end of a busy semester. I have 2 brief introductions, one kind of official and one a little unofficial. Professor Harrison already mentioned the books, and that's part of John's bio. Cal Freeman, we call him John or Johnny or Cal, goes by Cal as an author, but we all knew him as John. Author of several books of poetry, Fight Songs, Brother of Leaving, and of course Poolside at the Dearborn Inn. His writing has appeared in a lot of really nice journals with wide readership, including River Styx, Southward, Passages North, Hippocampus, and the Poetry Review. He serves as writer in residence with Inside Out Literary Arts Detroit and teaches at Oakland University. About his poetry, like Philip Levine, another kind of really great Detroit writer, and Robert Haas, but in his own distinctive way, Cal's poetry is concerned with the working lives of everyday people. His ear attuned to the special cadences, obsessions, and terrors of this part of the American Midwest. His poems are, for me, about the coexisting miraculousness and banality of life, and in the most unexpected places, a horse, a flower, a municipal airport's restaurant lounge, the tarmac, he finds something like beauty. Unsentimental, but deeply humanist, which I think is really, for me, the hallmark of Cal's work. There's also a wry humor at work that I also think is particularly Midwestern. I'll just quote a line from a recent poem called Ode to Coca-Cola, Helium, and Carbon that recently appeared in the Oxford American. And the line is simply, "The town of Flat Rock is stone deaf to poetry." And I love that. I love the way it catches you twice, and the rock and the stone. And I love the humor of it and the truth and the pride, even in that. Um, and, as a professor, there are certain students who, and I think all of us who have been teachers or professors in any sense, certain students who, at the end of the day, I think you feel they taught you more than you taught them. There's something about the relationship that, in a sense, they've given more than you've given. And I felt that way with Cal, who I had the privilege of first meeting. So I was hired in 1995, didn't know much about the state at all. We ended up downriver and ended up living close to Peggy, John Freeman Sr., John, and Emily. And they took us under their wing as a young family. So I first met Cal, I think, when they drove by and I was mowing the lawn. You might have been in 7th or 8th grade. And then I had the privilege to share an office with Dr. Freeman, where I learned how to be a better professor, a mentor, how to interact with students, what the life of a professor was like, which I had never really seen in grad school, having come right out of grad school. So I was privileged then, of course, to have both John and Emily as students, as undergraduates, and have seen them, and then John, as he went off for his MFA at Bowling Green, and then has continued the life of a musician, and as a poet, and as a professor. But I also just want to say that John also works he's known for poetry, but he also works in another anonymous genre. I would call it the put down, or the surprise. So I've kept a few artifacts from my days, and I just wanted to bring these in. This, I don't know where this came from. This, about maybe when John was a sophomore, some students had finished a speech and left their posters outside the hallway. And this was left near my office, and I had been there for weeks. And then one day I come in, and it says, "Rombies, take a look at this. Thought it might help you." High achieving, optimistic. I knew immediately from the handwriting and the tone that this was John's, and I've saved this. The other thing was when you and Emily were clearing out your father's office. I came in the next day. I hadn't been there that day, and found on my desk an off print that I had given to Dr. Freeman when I was first hired. An off print is a little thing. It's like it's one of your journal articles that you often put on the job market. I had given this to Dr. Freeman. Apparently, it was in the office for many, many years. When I came in the day after, I found it flopped on my desk with a note, anonymous: "Dear Dr. Rombies, I've read your essay with great interest. I suspect you're going places in the world of film scholarship. I'd caution, however, against getting too speculative. You see, you may think of yourself as the cat's meow, but you've actually started to seem like a meowing cat by design." Now I knew, just you have to be a forensic scientist to compare. And there are many, many more. Professor Barry has many as well. We could all share these stories of this other genre, which I think is your true forte, as much as I love your poetry. So it's a great pleasure to introduce you. And it's nice for us to be able to hear you speak your poetry for us tonight. So thanks.
So I didn't expect some of my past hijinks to catch up with me tonight. I'm really honored to be here, and I really appreciate, Heather, Mary Catherine, Rosemary, Nick, Michael, and others, to kind of spearhead this effort to get a scholarship named after my dad. It was really hard. Obviously, it's always hard to lose a parent. It was really hard to lose him kind of during COVID. Just didn't have enough of a chance to gather and get people together who cared about him, and a lot of people who would have typically been at the funeral weren't there. So, part of my goal tonight, I want to read some poems from the book, but I want to read one of my dad's poems. I want to invite my dad's one of his oldest friends, Bill Atola. I want to invite him up to say a couple things that that he wrote about my dad that I think people here will really appreciate hearing. And I also want my sister to read an elegiac poem she wrote about my dad. And I'm also going to have my dad's old friend Bob Wachowski play a song with me. So you're going to get a variety show more than a poetry reading tonight. But I want to start off with this poem called Incidente. And it's a poem my dad wrote. Don't worry, I'm not going to read any of his limericks, which he was famous for. But my dad in the 70s went over to Europe to visit his sister who was living in Cornwall and bought a Motobacan racing bike, took it on a hovercraft over to mainland Europe and rode all over and took a pretty nasty spill off a mountainside in Italy and wrote a really beautiful poem about it. So I thought that would be a good place to begin. They have brought in the young American from very high up in the mountains, speaking Italian, one of them speeding dangerously down its spiraling curves, the other waving a frantic handkerchief in warning, risking the very same accident that has just claimed this bleeding one and his bicycle with its twisted handlebars and turned out pack all over the road. What it must be like to be thrown from one dimension into another. And it takes him 2 languages to explain how it happened, this disfigurement, the locked knee, the scrapes of flame with pain, red badges awarded along the road. But there is no language that can quite tell the rest. Awakened in the first dew of the morning, in the white dawn of dream horses, snuffing and prancing in underwater grace, the pure and endless sail of bicycle spokes threshing, spinning in glinting sparks of light, a nomad living off the fruit I could pick, the bread I could beg, the chance sweetness of flashing in and out of others' lives, soaked to the bone in nose-dripping rain on the way, just because of some picture I had seen before. Driven to a gas station, abandoned, with a French motorcycle gang who took out arrow markers and posted them on the road, tricking people in their comfortable cars off the road into their ghost station, leaving one lonely arrow pointing to heaven. Lost and tourists struck on the Riviera, gawking and begawked, standing by the wharf of parked yachts, while the mechanical bird zipped wildly by on unseen wires. In a lonely, lost field, the full-length tomb of 3 balloonmen shot down in the war, men fallen out of the sky, sealed forever in the bronze of sleep. And now Italy, sleeping on beaches by the soft wash of waves, eating yogurt and bananas at one with the easy motion of the bike, its turn of light and spokes. Celestial music of wheat fields swaying more in the light than in the wind, riding, walking up the stubborn heights of mountains, then descending wildly, curving and uncaring, thrown headlong and caught in the twisting cross currents of speed, warping metal. Now the hospital is buzzing with my badly translated tale. Americano, warm bowls of coffee in the morning, then butterfly x-rays of my lungs and the doctor trying to understand how I have come from Liverpool to unexpectedly here, 31 years old, asking, but where did you sleep along the way? I smile. Sotto l'Estelle, under the stars, under the stars. So I'm going to ask Bill Watola to stand up and read a short piece now. And I really appreciate Bill being here. And Bill couldn't be at my dad's funeral, but I think he has a particular insight into my father and who he was at various points in his life. A lot of people here will appreciate hearing this.
Let me make a comment. John wrote that poem. He went to England after finishing most of his degree at MSU and lived in London for a bit. And I joined him then in Collegiate College. And then John went to Paris. So we lived together. I was on the room, one class for a couple months. He then went to Paris to do some more research. I joined him there for about another month or two. And then he went on to write the poem as well. And I thought, anyway,
Can you speak up a little because I want to make sure we can hear you?
What's that? Yeah, you want to come up here?
not really.
You want this one?
Even after more than a year, I'm still trying to process that my best friend is no longer living and occupying his space in the world. Shortly after John died, I told Cal that as memories of your dad surface, I regret that he and I cannot share these memories together with you. From the moment I met John in Miss Kunkel's 7th grade English class in junior high, I considered him my best friend. We shared an immediate interest in sports. Together we played junior high football and basketball, and in high school ran track and cross country. The summer before 9th grade, we played basketball almost every day for hours, honing our skills that John kept in use for the rest of his life. But it was our interest in the literary arts that was our real passion. John and I were consumed with the impulse to put ideas on paper as the ultimate creative act. Any and all ideas, in any form. I knew Cal was familiar with his dad's academic career and his published papers, but I also wanted Cal to know that his father and I started by writing poetry in high school. I did mostly free verse, but his dad was drawn to the regimented stuff and wrote sonnets and even once tackled that most difficult of forms, the sestina. It was his dad's homage to our beloved Ezra Pound's sestina, damn it all this our South stinks peace. And I wanted Cal to know that his father and I wrote a poem together that was published on the poetry page in the Detroit News. Yes, Cal, you heard that right. One of the local papers, the Detroit News, once had a weekly page of poetry. And I wanted Cal to know that while in college, his father and I collected poems from friends and published 3 issues of the Poetry Journal. And we arranged for a few of the poets to read in college and high school English classes. And I wanted Cal to know that when his father was working on his master's, we had lunch, always the same restaurant, always pizza with green peppers, 1 or 2 times a week on Wayne State's campus, during which we worked on a treatment for a novel together. Although we did this for many months, we never started putting words on paper for the novel, but we did finish a short, very short story about a dog's ghost. And I wanted Cal to know that in perhaps our happiest collaboration, one that had us laughing out loud on many occasions, his father and I and a talented artist created a daily comic strip. It was about working the night crew in a grocery store, putting cans on shelves and making displays. And we were writing what we knew, for all 3 of us had worked on night crews during our college days. We even went to the Detroit News to see if they would give our special brand of humor a chance to entertain their readers. We showed our scripts to an editor who looked them over, and then very politely, our offer was refused. And I wanted Cal to know that even though his father has been a physical presence in the world, he still gives me moments of joy when I remember our times together.
You want to read a poem?
So I went to great lengths not to read this poem tonight, including telling my brother that I couldn't find the poem, and he was so gracious that he not only found the poem for me, but he also made edits to it. So thanks a lot. On that note, well, most of you probably know my dad as a former teacher, as a prolific scholar. He was also one hell of a pool player, and he shot a really good hook shot, and he would like everyone to know that, I'm sure. But on that note, I wrote a poem shortly after he died, sort of about just shooting pool with him during the last year of his life. Obviously, with COVID, we didn't leave the house very much, so he'd come over to my basement, we'd shoot pool at all hours of the day. And at that time, he was also starting a project on object-oriented ontology. So whether I liked it or not, I learned a lot about the topics. So this poem kind of ties all of those things together, and my brother's making me read it. So on that note, Elegy with Billiards and OOO, which is object-oriented ontology. He always thought I banked the object balls pinned to the rail too hard, even though most of my shots fell. I tried to explain how the speed made millimeter missteps in aim more forgivable. A slow roll to the pocket allowed the object ball to drift from its intended target. Convincing him was near impossible, though. He never liked to use too much force, considering it the style of macho bar league guys who would never stand a chance against him at the table. He prided himself on a soft shot, a knowledge of angles, and the quiet point of contact. He spoke of object-oriented ontology, OOO ontology, not apostrophe, that interruption announcing the soliloquy, that slowed down index of the play, a great deal in his final days at the table. However, even when I drew out the connection, he refused to consider pool as metaphor, holding this plane, this corpus colossum of felt, as somehow immune to the flat object-oriented ontological theory he was so quick to assign to Poe's raven and Cummings' grasshopper. He maintained his agency in the space, even as inexplicable spins and a sluggish roll left him without another shot. Thank you for making me do something I never wanted to do.
So thanks a lot, Emily and Bill, for being here and reading. I really appreciate that. Start off with a couple poems from my book, and I really appreciate everybody who's supporting this and buying books, and just people have traveled from out of town to be here. It's really a wonderful event. So I'm gonna read a poem I wrote for my brother-in-law who owns a window washing company. It's called An Ode to the Proprietor of the Eastern Great Lakes Window Washing Company. There is a swath of green beyond the window and a ceramic tiger that appears to slouch in reflection or preen or crouch before pouncing. The way some images belie the substance that composes everything or underpins it or slackens it. Call that substance what you will, quark or dark matter, carbon, basketball, or atom. I have my theories and suspicions. I remember being a face in a Polaroid. We were watching the Pistons close out the Lakers in 2004 in some dive bar on the border of Dearborn and Detroit. That was a decade and a half ago. Now my brother-in-law owns a window washing business that's hell on his back. He'd be unhappy with this view spackled with bird shit, pollen, and dead bugs, which makes it mid-June, which means somewhere Chauncey Billups is dragging Shaquille O'Neal through high screen and rolls and hitting 15-footers on automatic. The game has changed since then. Back then, you had to tire the big man out like prayers. But formal innovations in basketball don't last the way they do in poems. Now there are few big men, just short, run and gun stanzas. I remember that June. She was sobbing in a tulle gown. The tamarack had grown too close to the roof, dropping needles on it. My brother-in-law can't praise enough how a trace of copper repels the snot-green shingle rot that crusts to roof and window. Tomorrow he will work in the sun, draping a cloth over a metal extension to soap the second-story panes on a residential job while I sleep. If vocation is all we have of meaning, dispassionate absurdity is earned, and I am only tangentially alive. I could clean this window and end up killing several birds over the course of several days. It's not the southwest wind that makes a ladder or a tamarack sway. It's not the job of poems to be windows. So I spent a lot of time growing up riding horses, and this is a poem I wrote for my friend Sally. It's called A Georgic for Sally and Darla. And Georgics are these sort of, pastoral poems. My friend Sally got a cow named Darla from her grandchildren last Christmas. She took the cow for a ceremonial spin around the indoor riding ring at her farm. Sally held a candy cane pattern lead line in her hand. Darla wore a red bow around her neck and an ivy halter around her square head. A square head seems to be a desirable trait among purchasers of bovines. Sally never cared too much for your kind of kindness when she was out there in her snowsuit giving riding lessons on February nights. She cared more about her horses and how you treated them than you, which is its own kindness, or if not kindness exactly, something we might call humane. She cared more for how you treated them than you, dissected the animal's sentence so she could tell you how to act. A cow gnaws on a cud of clover at Sally's farm. No contingency of the subordinate clause in her instruction. Don't dig your heels into the animal's side. Don't jerk on the bitted mouth. Sit up. Equitate. Equitate may not be a real verb, but you didn't get cute about prescriptive grammars in the imperative syntax of equitation. Not with Sally. None of us loved her then, but now that we're grown, we agree those were the best times of our lives, which might lead you to believe we're lachrymose and bitter, or simply bored to tears, sad people. I myself wonder if those memories have been cowed by the trickle of time. We know you can make a cow of memories as you can make a verb of cow, as you can horse any lexicon into absurdity. Although it has two out-facing eyes, a memory is a myopic animal with a square head. Treacle is the honey lathered over time, just as a big house surrounded by acres of pasture can be made to stand for something more than itself. A cow or horse can come in the guise of a gift, that surplus of the giver's self. In the ring, the stapled ribbons flit, while children learn to trot the serpentine and care for what they can't afford to own. Thanks so much. I'm going to read a poem about love. Sarah, my wife, went to school here and recently judged the Dudley Randall recently too. She's in San Diego right now and wishes she could be here. But I wrote this poem for her. We go up to Port Austin, Michigan sometimes, and I was up there. It's called Ars Poetica. We're reading The Death and Life of the Great Lakes. The Death and Life of the Great Lakes, a really amazing book by Dan Egan. Rising levels in Saginaw Bay this summer have ruined the wooden stairs leading from the breakwall to the beach. Rust rises to a high water mark not seen here in decades. An inscrutable ecological signpost. A beetle scampers out of mud-dried kelp. A shelf of stones 30 yards out veils a precipitous drop into green depths. The stench of life is everywhere. My mother-in-law tells a story of coming here as a girl and having to shovel mounds of alewives from the beachhead before swimming. This book describes the lake bed as a field cobbled with invasive mussel shells and refers to those zebras and quaggas flushed from the ballast tanks of freighters as biological filtering machines that trick us into thinking the lakes are well. A middle-aged woman rafts out beyond the sandbar and her husband swims to deliver her a drink. Some sugary rum concoction in a plastic water bottle, his ratty ponytail flat against his sweaty, water-kissed skin. Off to the southwest, the strokes of windmills mimic the bathers soaking up sun and water in their plastic rafts. Seagulls bark at each other in the foam, plucking gobies from breakwater, wounding them before dropping them in sand. Bouts of animal behavior, this propensity for pure fun, different than joy or love, deleterious as mussels straining algae from fresh water. Boats cruise the clear as glass surface. Poetry, despite what has been written in the shadow of murky etymologies and unkept ethics during the dull regenerative paces that compose our human time, is little more than a series of ridiculous acts of love we could never plan out in the morning or the day before at dusk. A chin cupped in a palm, a kiss, a cocktail waded through the combers. And I think we'll end before the scholarship presentation on a song. I'm going to get Bob up here. This is Banjo Bob Walkowski.
I knew John very well. We were good friends. We were in each other's wedding. I would like, now some people may deny this, but I would like to give a tribute to his wit. Now, we used to shoot pool and make smart cracks. And the famous one, I remember your father saying, was, I heard of being born with a silver spoon in the mouth, but a service for four. The other thing, a number of people have been influenced by Allen Ginsberg's Howl. John was a part that he always quoted was throwing potato salad at lectures of data. Now, if you go deep within yourself now, I'm certain you'll hear the burp of a Tupperware container of potato salad. Thank you.
Here we go. 145 is you.
Oh, now.
It's Christmas time in Washington. The Democrats rehearse, getting into gear for 4 more years of things not getting worse. Republicans drink whiskey and think they're lucky stars. They said they cannot seek another term. There'll be no more FDR. Well, I sat home in Tennessee
just staring at the screen. An uneasy feeling in my chest, wondering what it means. So come back, Woody Guthrie, come back to us now, and tear your eyes from paradise and rise again somehow. And if you run into Jesus, maybe he can help us out. Come back, Woody Guthrie, to us now. There's foxes in the hen house, there's crows out in the cold. The unions have been busted, their proud red banners torn. But to listen to the radio, you think it all was well. But you and me and Cisco know it's going straight to hell. So come back in the Goldman, rise up Ojo Hill. The barricades are going up, they cannot break our will. So come back to us, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. We're marching into Selma as the bells of freedom ring. And come back, Woody Guthrie, come back to us now. Tear your eyes from paradise and rise again somehow.
If John were here right now, he would be tickled. He was never happier than when he was talking about his family and his students and his friends, so many of whom are here. I have to tell you that having you here, I'm just picturing his face, hearing Emily's poem, hearing that music, hearing your work. Nothing would have made him happier. I want to say that a number of people who've made his scholarship possible are here and at home. Hello to the YouTubers. We're so grateful to all of you. Heather Hill, my colleague, is going to present the inaugural John C. Freeman Scholarships. Come on up, Heather. I'm going to turn it over.
Okay. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here tonight. And I don't have a lot prepared, which is unusual for me, as my students probably know. So in honor of John, I'm going to kind of freewheel it, if that's okay with everybody. Freewing. Losing John was amazingly painful. Not a day, I don't think, or week or month goes by which doesn't feel like there's something wrong with the world. And of course, there is something wrong with the world because John's not with us anymore. So I just, I noticed the sun coming in here, right? And it was blinding me, and I'm having trouble seeing, but maybe that's John sort of telling us to try to see things from a more hopeful and loving and good perspective. And the scholarship, the John C. Freeman Scholarship, was established to honor John, to honor his goodness and his multiply talented perspectives as a scholar and as a teacher, and his contributions and dedication to the department, and his wit and his wry humor, and just his presence in Briggs and in the college and across the community. And as Mary Catherine said, we have been honored by the generosity of over 120 contributors to the scholarship some of whom are in this room today. And so I'm really honored to be able to present our inaugural awardees tonight with the scholarship that is in his name. The first of our awardees is Samantha Strader. She's a biology major. We don't hold that against her. And an English minor. And unfortunately, she can't be here tonight, although I know she really wished she could have. She has work commitments. But our other awardee is here tonight, Erin Letourneau, who is an English major and a minor in women's and gender studies, and also a minor in political science. So I would welcome her to come forward and accept her award. And John, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Heather. Congratulations, Erin. If John were here, he would want all of our students to get this award. He loved his students. He would light up when he would talk about the various projects they were working on and the weird ideas that they had. The weirder, the better, because John had that kind of mind. He wanted new thinking. Before you leave, I want to make sure to invite you to take in an extra celebration of poetry tonight. The library staff, Rebecca Tull and Pat Higo, and my colleague Rosemary Weatherston have been hard at work on 5 exhibit cases around poetry at our university and in the city of Detroit. One is the back case in this room. And then when you go downstairs, there are 4 cases on your way out. Rosemary, do you want to say anything special about them?
It's really a celebration of the great community of poetry. It's everything from this year's wonderful Dusty Randall competition winners, our undergrad, to work with our students through the publications that John was such a mentor of, through our faculty and alumni publications, as we see the talent goes beyond, and then really into Broadside Voters Press in cities, so from the classroom all the way across the globe. And now you too here are part of our community of poetry. So I really want to thank Rebecca Tull right here, people for all the work pulling from the archive. It's a very nice display. We invite people to look at it on the way out.
This is the perfect way to celebrate April, to celebrate the month of poetry, to celebrate John, to celebrate Cal, to celebrate the Freeman family and all of his friends. Thank you all for being here. What a wonderful celebration, and have a wonderful night. The books are absolutely still for sale. Please, and John can autograph them, and the donations for the scholarship will continue to be accepted, because we will be able to give scholarships as long as our money lasts, which we are going to make stretch and is going to support so many students over the years. So thank you, and have a wonderful night. That was fantastic. I'm going to get my mask on.
This is a very careful.
Very good.
Well,
Oh my gosh.
I'll help you remember their names. So, have a good evening, my
God.